I live in Budapest, and so I had the time confused because we're 1 hour ahead. So my sincerest apologies, and I hope yeah, it'll still be I can make up for the lost time here. Again, it's wonderful to be with you, and so we're going to be talking about effective communication. And to begin with, maybe you could just write in the chat, what are the things that you are hoping um, to learn from this or to take away from our seminar? You could write a sentence, a word, and as we get started, I think it's always great to start with what are your expectations? And I will get the slide ready here as you tap those in the chat. A framework called the Four Temperaments, and this is a very old concept, and maybe many of you have heard about it. Hippocrates came up with it, the Greek Hippocrates. So it's been around a long time, and man, I'm not a psychologist, so I just want to say that first off, that I'm not trying to teach anything about psychology. But as a coach, this framework has helped me in helping people manage conflicts or learn how to more effectively communicate. And it works in different areas, in at work, in families, among friends. So I'm hoping that this will help you in your communication. So the idea is that there are four types of temperaments that we all fall into. And these are broad categories. So, again, we're all unique, but these are just some broad categories to help us understand each other and understand um, how I speak, and how I express myself and how others speak and express themselves. And the idea is that temperaments don't change. We're wired with these temperaments. And, what can change is our personality. So the personality is how we express our thoughts, our feelings, and that can change over time with our life experience, with education, with our birth order. There's many things that influence our personality. So that changes, but our temperament, the way we're wired, the way it's like a fingerprint. That doesn't. The idea behind this framework is that doesn't change, and so it's good to understand the way I'm wired. This doesn't mean that you can't, improve or, I'm not trying to put you in a box, but this can just help you in understanding why you do certain things or why people do other things, and then through understanding, being able to better communicate with each other. So now there's a test that you can take, or actually many different tests you can take for these four temperaments. And you can just do a search online. I have a certain test. You can also write me if you're interested in taking the test that I have. But since we don't have time to do that today, which is what I would usually do when I do like a coaching workshop, we're just going to talk about them, and maybe you'll figure out and find out where you fit. So the four temperaments are sanguines, cholerics, phlegmatics, and melancholics. And just I want to say right away that none of them are better than the others. These are just the ways we're wired. Because I know that some of these names may have some bad connotations or good connotations, but generally speaking, these are just ways we are. So sanguines are the ones that, they speak the language of people and fun, right? They like hang out with people. They love just having a good time, and that's just who they are. They kind of like to sparkle, in other words. The clerics are the ones that they speak the language of power and control. And again, that can kind of sound negative, but it's a good thing too, to have the power to change things, to control things. And so these kind of people, they like to really know what's going on and have a plan, or at least somebody has a plan. There's some kind of, there's a sense that there's somebody's in control. We're moving forward, and getting things done. So the next one is phlegmatics, and these speak the language of calm and harmony. So they like peace, they like balance. They're usually low key, and just easy to get along with. Melancholics, they speak the language of perfection and order. So they're very meticulous. Oftentimes they're perfectionists. And let me see, is this okay? So So we're going to try to maybe quickly, maybe you can try to assess yourself, and you can then put it in the chat where you fall. And generally, you have a dominant temperament and a secondary temperament. But right now, we're going to maybe just focus on one of the temperaments that you see yourself falling into. But just so you know, there's also the secondary one. So if you think, well, I'm also this and I'm that, well, then maybe one of them is a primary, one's a secondary. So sanguines are extroverts, as you could probably imagine. And let me see if I could, yeah. So they're generally so they're extroverts, meaning extroverts direct their thoughts and feelings outward. So that means, they kind of generally like to process things, and also it says they process their thoughts and feelings outwardly. So they like to talk out things through. An introvert would be one that likes to direct their thoughts and feelings inward, and they process those thoughts and feelings inward. Okay, so that's the definition we're using. You might have heard different definitions, but that's the definition for this framework. So a sanguine would be an extrovert and one more thing, people-oriented. So there's people-oriented people and task-oriented people. The people-oriented people, they're inclined towards fostering relationships. And task-oriented people are the ones that are inclined toward accomplishing tasks. And you may have heard this category before. And one is not better than the other. They're just different. One, if they had a choice, they would be working on a task. And the other, if they had a choice, they'd be hanging out with people. And I don't know if you can guess about me, but I'm an extrovert. I'm sorry, extrovert, and I'm people-oriented. I like to hanging out with people. If I had a choice between I don't know, preparing for an exam and having coffee with somebody, I would choose the coffee. Although sometimes I know I need to do the preparation, but that's just my bent. I like to, and here's an example too. I have a friend who is the opposite. She's a task-oriented person, and she's on my team. And because I know that about her, whenever we need to get something done, I let her lead. Or like if we need to get somewhere, I'll let her kind of her sense of urgency kind of rule, because I can tend to just talk and talk, and we'll be late to something. So I lean on the people who are task oriented to keep us on schedule. But my strength, is being people oriented. That helps us connect with people. So I can use that for our connections. Okay, so let's going back to categorizing ourselves. Sanguine would be an extrovert and people oriented. Cholerics would be extroverted because they also like to process things outwardly, but they're task oriented. They like to get things done. And a phlegmatic likes to process internally, so they might not readily be sharing their thoughts and feelings. But they're also very people oriented. They're very concerned about how people feel. And making sure there's harmony and relational peace. So they would tend to maybe not to engage in some kind of conflict because they want to keep the peace. Whereas melancholics, they are introverted, so they process things internally. They think things through internally, and they're also task oriented. So you can kind of think through, okay, am I, extrovert, introvert, people oriented, task oriented, and then you can generally kind of gauge where you are on this chart. Okay, and I'm trying to see. And Olga, if you see anything, I'm having trouble seeing my chat, but if you see anything in the chat, you can also feel free to give me that question or that comment. And I'll try to, I don't know why I don't see my mouse here. Oops, sorry about that. Let me do that. Okay. Oh, here we are. Nope. Yeah, sorry, I'm sharing. There we are. Okay. So I'm a sanguine for 99%. Okay, I'm a sanguine for sure. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. The sanguines are the one they're writing in the chat because they like to express themselves, right? So maybe the phlegmatics right now, if you're a phlegmatic, you're like, I don't know if I want to share that. So and but these I just feel free to interact. I'd love to see where you guys land. If I'm a sanguine primarily, or actually, it's hard to say. I'm in between a sanguine and a phlegmatic. When I took the test last, I was actually 50-50. I have no choleric, no melancholy, because so Yeah, I'm 50-50 melancholic, phlegmatic probably. Yeah, phlegmatic. That works. So then that would be like harmony, peace and harmony. And so you're introverted. But then some you can be people-oriented, task-oriented, kind of depending on the situation. Okay, so I hope that helps a bit. But you can look at these temperaments as kind of like languages. We speak, our temperament is the language that we speak. So if you take a language like your mother tongue, right? Ukrainian or English or Russian or another language, you're comfortable speaking that mother tongue, right? You don't think twice, and that's just how you speak. Now, when you come across somebody else who doesn't speak that language, then it can get difficult, right? You either have to learn that language or they have to learn your language. Of course, nowadays use Google Translate. But and as you learn a foreign language, it can be uncomfortable at first. Right now, my family and I, we're learning Hungarian because we live here, and it's difficult. It's a little bit painful. It's hard to express ourselves, and you have to really work hard to be able to communicate and to understand. So the same is true. It's very similar to temperaments, right? So if you're a sanguine, you speak the language of sanguine, right? And you speak the language of fun and people. And if you're not aware of how the other people speak, then you can be misunderstood, or you can misunderstand people. You might think, oh, you're just out to have fun. Like a cleric might think of a sanguine. Why don't they ever get serious? I don't know if you've ever heard that, those sanguines, if you've heard that before. Or the clerics, people might think, oh, the clerics are just bossy. They don't really care about people. They're not, really concerned about people, but that's not completely true. It's just that they have they speak a different language, and then the melancholy, also they have more of a language of perfection and order. So they're very much about, getting things right and having high standards. And so, but so this is about learning how each of us speak and being aware of that. And um, and there are different frameworks. This is not the only one. There's temperaments. There's the Myers-Briggs. Maybe you've heard of that, which is kind of based off of the temperaments. There's different assessments you can take, many, many different ones. But I think the idea behind all of it is to kind of be aware of how I speak, how I express myself, and understanding others, how they express themselves, how they act, and how they would maybe interpret what I would say. So I think just these frameworks help us to gain that awareness. And I would say to be curious about, I like to think of it this way too. When I have maybe some problems with somebody else, I want to get curious about that person. What's actually how I want to learn more. How do they communicate? What are their values? So this framework helps do that. So now let's go to. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mouse for some reason. I can't see my mouse. Okay. All right. So now here's some strengths and weaknesses that you can look at. And again, the idea here is that like the temperaments, they're neutral. They're not good or bad. They're just the way we are. And again, these are just like 4 types, but we're all very unique. We have different combinations. But if you want to look at, and so the idea is, being in your temperament, you want to learn to leverage the strengths that you have and to avoid the weaknesses. And I think I've talked about this before, that oftentimes we want to just focus on improving in our weak areas. And there is some point to that, but I think it's much more effective to think about what am I good at? What are my strengths? How can I leverage or use my strengths? And so that's the idea of these temperaments too, is there are certain strengths and weaknesses that are connected to each temperament. And the idea, is to try to leverage those strengths. And I'm really having trouble with, why can't I? Oh, nope. So I'm trying to get rid of the chat here. Oh, there we are. Okay, there, now I can see. So maybe if you could just look at if you kind of identified your temperament, if you could write in the chat, what are some of the things that stand out to you about your strengths and your weaknesses? So just take a few moments here and look what resonates with you. Like, oh, that's me, and then I can kind of share, depending on what you guys come up with. I can share about myself, or love to hear your thoughts as well. Um, what stands out to you? Okay. Yeah, and while you're thinking about that, I can just share too a little bit from my experience. I would say that, again, my sanguine self, I love to tell stories. I'm a great storyteller. But the weakness of that would be I can't remember. Sometimes I can't remember names. I'll get so excited about getting to know somebody that I'll forget their name. Whereas probably a melancholy would not do that. They would be very meticulous. Um, I show my emotions openly, but also I can exaggerate and elaborate. So I don't know if you can see the connections. So like I'd like to tell stories, I like to give details, but if I go too far, that can become a weakness. That I can give too many details, that it gets kind of tedious to other people. Like, or I'll tell a story and then I'll say, oh, and this reminds me of this, and this reminds me of that, and people kind of get confused. So that can be a weakness, but my strength is I can tell good stories. I can be inspiring with my stories, and that's there too, right? Inspiring, motivating, cheerful, right? Um, but I can also be kind of moody. Sorry. Um, okay. See, I'm curious. Are you seeing anything here? Yeah, so I'm in trouble with names. Okay. I'm a big drama queen and never remember the details about people, including names too. Yeah, you might probably sang one then, right? So, again, the strength is you're very much a people person. You're like the life of the party, maybe. But then if your emotions kind of get controlled, then you can be, emotions can shift, and it can be kind of, you know, um, kind of a bummer for people to be around. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, come on now. And also, please feel free if you want to jump in and just turn on your mic. Feel free to share or to ask a question. I really love interaction. So, okay, I can't. Oh, however, my emotions always under control. Okay, that's great. Then that means that you're using. So Tatiana says, however, my emotions are always under my control. I just like expressing them. Great. Yeah, and that's where I think you learn, you grow in your personality, is by knowing how to manage those strengths and weaknesses, and how to kind of live in your strength. Okay. Okay, so and then the clerics, and I'll just kind of share some things that stand out to me from the people I've dealt with, because I'm not a cleric, and I know I've driven some clerics crazy, but because of my being a sanguine and a phlegmatic, because they they really like, clerics like clarity, and they kind of like to know the plan. Like I have a friend, she's a cleric, and the same one I was just mentioning earlier. She's task oriented. And again, doesn't mean she doesn't love people. She loves people, and she actually explained it this way: she does tasks to make it better for people. Because if the tasks aren't done, then people are going to suffer. So that's how she connects the two. And they're usually kind of the confident people. In a crisis situation, you want a choleric, because they're good at being level-headed and being able to make just level-headed decisions in the moment. And they're usually good at delegating, and they like to see everybody doing their part of the job, part of the work. And it really drives them nuts when people are just slacking off. And what they'll do though is they'll delegate up to a point, but if they see that it's not getting controlling. Um, okay, let's go to then phlegmatic. Does everybody hear me okay? Let's see. All right. Oh, there's another chat. Let's see what we got. Green and blue, straight about mean interest mixing. So Lana is saying green and blue. It's an interesting mix. It all depends on people with and in what situations. Okay, so phlegmatic and melancholy. Yeah, that's good. I think different situations can bring out the different sides of us. So let's look at the one. So kind. So phlegmatics. I mean, these phlegmatics actually seem like perfect people because they're kind, they're considerate, they're easy to get along with. And this is, yeah, I'm very much this way. Again, maybe 50-50 with sanguine and phlegmatic, but I'm pretty easygoing. It's hard to get me upset. Now the downside could be I could be not that enthusiastic. I guess it's depending on if I'm connection with my sanguine side or phlegmatic side, but I can be very just calm. I could be worried. Another weakness is being worried. What are the things here? They're usually diplomatic, and they're leaders that are interested in the growth of others. They want to lead and help others realize their potential. But because of that, they can also not be decisive. So that would be the difference between a phlegmatic leader and a choleric leader. A choleric leader, maybe they would be more of a person you would say, oh, that's a leader, because they like to give commands. But they're just a different type of leader. So a choleric leader would be a good leader in kind of these crisis situations, or when a decision needs to be made. And that's my friend who I was just talking about. She's very good at making a decision in the moment when it needs to be made. Where I might be kind of like indecisive, oh, do this, do that, and I get stressed out. Okay, so the next one would be, are we doing time? Okay, yeah. So next one would be melancholy, and the melancholies, they're empathetic. My wife's actually, she's a melancholy, and she's very deep, and she connects people in a deep way and very empathetic. And they generally like to work alone. It's really hard for them to work with other people, and that can be a weakness. But on the other hand, because they work alone and because they are so focused, they can get a lot done. They're very productive, and they're very much focused on high standards, and usually creative, analytical, just meticulous people like to plan through and think through everything before they actually do it or say it, which can make them also hesitant. And one other quality about melancholies is they are, because they have high standards. They hold themselves to high standards, and they hold others to high standards. So they're critical of themselves and others. That's a weakness. But it's something that also you need to be aware of, because they can tend to be that way. I think it's always good to encourage them, and because they can get stuck in just this thing like, well, I didn't do that well, or whatever. Okay, those are the strengths and weaknesses. And again, I'm going kind of through this quickly. This usually take about probably 6 sessions to go through for this whole course. But before we go on, any other thoughts or questions that come to mind? Okay, well, let's go on. All right, here's the last slide, and then I'm gonna open up to questions and answers. Question and answers. We can do a little coaching if that's what you would like to do too. I can do, like I did last time. I did a short little quote coaching session. Okay, chat. We got some. This may be covered later in the presentation, but it is interesting to hear how to give criticism to each type. Okay, well, actually, this might help. This is one of my favorite parts of it, because okay, I didn't have the right. Okay, this is actually not strengths and weaknesses. I'm sorry. This is the needs. I didn't get that slide right. The needs of each temperament. Okay. Okay, so now, let me see. It is interesting that I thought I was sanguine, but all the strengths and weaknesses are more about the melancholy. Okay. All right. So let's look at this. This might help you too. This is another way you can kind of identify which temperament you are. So again, we'll start with the sanguines. The sanguines, their innate needs. All right. These are things that you're just built to need. And these are not bad. it's not bad to have needs. I think you probably hopefully understand that. It's part of being human. We have needs, and it's but each temperament has their own kind of unique needs. Um, so the sanguines, they crave approval, acceptance, attention, and affection. Okay. And again, you might have a mix of temperaments. So maybe not all of it resonate with you. Maybe there might be parts from one or two of the temperaments. So like approval, and I can identify with that, being like to people they would say, "Oh, you did a great job. That's good." Or acceptance, that's what sanguines want. They want to be invited to the party. They may not go, but they want to know that they're invited, that they're wanted. They like attention. So when they're like, I have one of my sons is that way too. And so when he tells me something, he wants me to look at him in the eyes. He wants to know that I'm focused on him. And oftentimes I'm on my phone. Unfortunately, I'm learning to be more focused on my children. I have 6 of them. So another thing is affection. They like I think somebody was mentioning, was it Tatiana, that you like to be expressive, right? They like to express their emotions, and so they like to also that physical kind of affection, or kind of like hugging, or some way of showing that, hey, I like you, you're important. The sanguines really like that, and that kind of fills their tank, their love tank. You've heard that expression before. And so then let's go to cholerics. Cholerics, they need loyalty, right? They need to know that we're committed to this thing. Like if we're on a team, then they want to know that everybody's committed to what we're doing here. And it just kills them when maybe someone would betray them. Would say one thing but do another. Cholerics they also have a need of sense of control. They want to know what's going on. If they're not controlling it, they want to know that somebody's controlling it, that there's a plan. And appreciation. They crave that. Like if they've done something well, and they don't hear, "Oh, you did. That was," they don't get recognition. It kind of just makes them wither. Credit for work. They like, this is very similar to that, but it's more of, I guess, about, well, maybe what I just said, I think, was more about credit for work. Appreciation is more about people being thankful. And so that really, it makes them want to do more when people are thankful. So those two are kind of similar, but and connected. Phlegmatics, they love harmony, so they like it when things are calm and peaceful. Now, this phlegmatic, for me, at home, I have 6 children, six boys, so there can be a lot of energy, and I don't mind the fun and the games because I'm a sanguine, but when there's all this kind of tension and fighting, that really just gets to me. I just want to have everybody get along. Feeling of worth, phlegmatics can struggle with that. I feel like, well, that they're not enough, but when they hear that and somebody says, your input is important, and so it's important, I think, if you know of a phlegmatic in your team, ask their opinion, because that really means a lot to them, because they probably won't volunteer it since they're introverts, but they often have a lot of good ideas, but they want to be asked. Lack of stress, I think that's similar to kind of the harmony part. You just want things to go smoothly. Respect, and if they're disrespected, that really gets to them. Melancholics, okay. Make sure okay. Melancholics, they're really all about safety is important to them. And I have 2 melancholics in my family, my wife and one of my sons. And they're always, whenever we do something, they're always thinking about, okay, is this safe? Or what do we need to do to make this safe? And I'm kind of the opposite. I'm a sanguine, so I'm very scattered. And so I don't really think a lot about risks or safety, but my wife is always thinking about that. I remember we once we're going to go fly somewhere and leave our children at home with some babysitters. And she said, well, we got to write up a will. What a will is, right? So you write up something in case you die, in case we get in case the plane crashes. And I'd like, wow, that's kind of a dark thought. Being a sanguine, I want to be about, happy and positive. But for her, it was about safety, that things will be taken care of. If we do die, that the kids will, be taken care of. Sensitivity, they really appreciate it when you try to understand them and try to cater to their needs. But they often won't speak up. They're introverts, right? But so I often, so for my wife, I've learned I just really need to kind of ask her, hey, what do you need? How can I help you right now? You know, for somebody in my team that way too. Again, they're going to do their work and just kind of keep their head down, but they really would appreciate it if somebody would show some sensitivity into what they're doing. Like, hey, can I help you with this? Or what do you need here? Kind of similar support is similar idea. You know, just that they would know that that you want to help them. And then space and silence. This is something I learned about my wife and other melancholics, because this is definitely not in me. I don't need space and silence, very rarely. I like to be around people. That's how I get energized. But melancholies, to be able to recharge their batteries, they need some time alone. And so my wife too, if I know that, she likes people, but if she's too much with people, or the boys kind of get to her, I know she just needs to go in her room, spend some time, right? She likes to write. She's writing. She writes. She's a writer. So go write, or go play your violin, or, do something, and or go away where you can be alone. And I've learned that about her. And that's the thing about language. I don't understand it because I don't have that need, but I know that's what she needs. And she's learned that about herself too. And she's learned about me that, here's another story real quick before I open up for questions and answers. Um, I do a lot of work from home, although I do have an office, but, well, let's back up. Sorry. At one point I was working a lot from home, although there's another half of the apartment that we had that was just dedicated to our office. And, but we didn't really have anybody at that time that was working. So my wife would, I was be working on a project and all the kids are noisy, and she'd say, why don't you go to the office and work where it's quiet? And I would like, but I would just feel inside, I don't want to do that. And, I would just rather, and I tell her, I can work here. It's fine. I like to be around, people. And so that really did clue me into, anyway, this kind of helped me understand that, oh, it's because I work better when I'm around people. When I'm by myself, I don't know, it's hard for me to be motivated. So one workaround with that is, well, if I go to a cafe and work, then I can work, because I'm around people, but I'm also by myself. I can focus. Okay, any comments or questions that you have? I've shared a lot of material. Let me see. That last question was, oh yeah, but it's interesting. Okay, how to give criticism to each, right? So, criticism. Well, you can look at it this way. It's kind of like a bank account. You put money in so you can take money out, right? So think about these needs, as ways to fill somebody's tank, or to put money into their account, so to speak. And then, when you need to express some kind of criticism, it'll be easier for them to take that. Now, this is not about using um, praise to then criticize, because people they catch on to that really quickly. Like, oh, you're so great at this, there, guys. But I want to talk about this. Then they kind of get, okay, you're just playing me. You're just trying to, in English say, butter me up, right? You were trying to tell me some good stuff so that then you could criticize. So I think it's, more of a mindset change. We're not, maybe you can think about what is motivating me to give that criticism. Is it genuine concern for that person, or genuine concern for our project? So it's not bad that, again, there's just different situations, but if you're on a team, you do need to give criticism, right? Because you want to make the best choice. So, and I think it takes time, just that you would, as maybe one of the team members or the leader, you want to show that you have a genuine concern for people about their needs. But also you want this team to have the greatest impact. And to do that, we all need to be honest and be able to talk about what would be the best decision, and trying to make it not so personal, like it's about putting somebody down, but it's more about what is the best idea, or what's the best way forward. So I guess in a relationship, it'd be the similar thing. Like my wife and I, and again, we're still learning, but giving and taking criticism, it's about, because we value the relationship. So we want to, for the health of a relationship, there's some things that we have to address, right? So, for example, um, I have tend to um, procrastinate, because I'm a phlegmatic. So I want to do things on my own time, when it's comfortable, when it's harmonious. But sometimes I just need to step up and do it. And so my wife can challenge me on that and say, look, we have to meet this deadline. We have to do this. So, please do that. And then I'll also think about what strengths can I use to meet that need, or to how would you say it, to address that criticism. So I hope that helps a little bit. So I think criticism, I think these needs help us to criticize in the right way. So when you criticize, you can think about what are the needs of this person, and how, as I'm going to be sharing about something that might be uncomfortable, how can I affirm this person, and how can I put money into their account, in a genuine way. And that comes about, I think, too, by just you doing it all the time. So it doesn't have to happen like, okay, I got to criticize. I'm going to get to fulfill some need. No, but if you're doing that all the time, then when the times come when you need to kind of um, challenge something, or say, hey, we need to rethink this, then I think they will be more open to criticism. I do have one example about melancholics and cholerics. I've had those on my team. And I remember one situation where we were working on something, and I think one of the choleric persons on my team was just very blunt about something, and I could see the melancholy just wither, just like, And at one point, the melancholy just left the room because she felt just attacked. Where I think the cleric was just trying to, hey, we need to clarify this, and we need to have some control here. The melancholy took it as a personal attack, and they didn't feel safe, and so they needed that space and silence. But when that person left, the choleric, thinking in the choleric mindset, oh, well, she's not loyal. Nobody, I would never do that. I would never leave because I'm loyal, and I expect loyalty. So maybe that's a good example to see how the different, we can be speaking one language and the other person hears it in a different way. So I was trying to explain it to the cleric and saying that, well, this person just felt they didn't feel safe. And so they needed that space. They left, not because they're not loyal, but because they just couldn't handle it. So this kind of helped our team work through that and understand why people respond the way they do. Okay, let's see how we got 9 minutes. Did anybody want to you could do a question in the chat. You can unmute yourself. And if you have any questions, if somebody want to be coached, I can give a quick coaching session, and which I did last time. So it can be any kind of challenge you want to work through. And again, we don't have a lot of time, so it'd probably be like a 5-minute express coaching. Or if you